Can you introduce yourself and your current role?
Sure. So my name is Brennan Sites, and I am the chief of Lower Burrell Volunteer Number 3.
And how long have you been in the fire service?
I've been in the fire service for 26 years. I'm a life member of United Volunteer Fire and Rescue, which is in Allegheny County, so I was there for 18 and a half years. And then when my wife and kids and I moved to Lower Burrell, I joined here, so I've been here going on 9 years.
And when you walk into the firehouse each day, what's the first thing that runs through your mind?
When I walk in this firehouse, and I see the people that are here, it's pride. And as a chief, there's always something going on. There's not a day that I'm not working. My second I call full-time job, which is unpaid. But when I come in here and I see the progress we're doing, and I see the work that my members are doing, it's pride. And then after that, it's okay. What's next? Like, what else do we got to do? So.
And what does the title of fire chief mean to you personally?
Responsibility. So I'm a big proponent of you don't need to be an officer to be a leader, but you should be a leader to be an officer. So if I look at these racks, there's a lot of people that have been here way longer than I have, and some of them are not officers, but we have a lot of leaders here. So as a leader and as a fire chief, it's the responsibility that everything that happens here, good, bad, or indifferent, comes to me. And so the biggest responsibility, and I say this to my members, I say this to their families during our banquet for the past 2 years that I've been chief, my biggest responsibility is that I get you home in a manner in which you left it. That's the biggest responsibility. And then after that, it's the responsibility of making sure that I'm being a mentor, I'm being a leader, I am ensuring that we're thinking strategically about the future, not just what we need now, but what we need in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So the next generation is set up just like we were set up. So fire chief is responsibility.
And what first drew you to firefighting?
How can I say this nicely? Well, one, I owe a lot of the way I do things to my parents. My mom and dad, growing up, were examples of community service. So my dad was in the Navy, and then both my parents, when I was young, were volunteer EMTs in Wilmerding when ambulances were still volunteer. And I remember vividly there was a portable in our living room, and my brother, who's 8 years older than me, when he wasn't old enough to watch me, a call would come in, one of them would leave, one of them would stay. And so that was that civic duty. But then my brother, like I said, he's older, joined Wall VFD when he was 16, I think. And you could join when you're 14. When I was 13 and a half, I remember this summer, I can't repeat what he said to me, but he egged me on to come check out the fire department. And as a younger brother, you always want to show up. Yeah, I could do this. And so I'm very proud to be my brother's brother, but I'm very thankful that he did what he did because it led me to this vocation. So.
And tell me about your first day on the job. What do you remember the most?
So that's that same day. I wasn't even a member yet. But like I said, I was 13 and a half, and I think they were going to a parade, and my brother was like, you're going to come, you're going to help us wash trucks. I had no interest. I just want to hang out with my buds, get into trouble, that kind of stuff. But I walked in that firehouse in Wall VFD. If you've ever been through Wall, if you blink, you miss it. It's one main road, I think 2 stop signs, and the station was one garage door. They had 2 bigger trucks, and you kind of sometimes had to squeeze through the middle. And I remember walking in, and they had a 1970s Peter Purse engine that they had referred mostly themselves. And then we had a 1970 CF Mac 55-foot telescope, which was an ex-FDNY prototype. And it's ironic because today, rightfully so, we're all worried about carcinogens and cancer prevention and all that kind of thing. Right. But the time that 1970 CF Mac started up and that diesel exhaust hit my face and I got to meet those people, I was hooked. I wanted to know how to do it. I wanted to And I was very blessed because all those individuals at that small fire department taught me what aggressive firefighting is, what smart firefighting is. And there's people that I look back, and I'll just name drop. People may not have even heard of these people before, but like Jack Zamoski, and John Dusak, and Chuck Slepsky, and Andy McWeeny. But the biggest influencer, and my brother, of course, but the biggest influencer in my career I met that day. His name was Steve Zamoski, and he was chief, very unopposing guy, small guy, but he knew his stuff, and he taught me what it meant to be a firefighter, what it meant to be a good leader, and you know, anytime as my career progressed, he was my mentor. And it's interesting, we lost him a couple years ago. He actually passed about 2 months before I took over as chief here. So that was selfishly of me, I know it sounds bad, but selfishly I wanted to share that moment with him. But I remember that day because that's when I met him, and that's when I met those guys. And so looking back on that, 26 years later, all of this, me being here, is because of them. So.
What lessons from your early years stuck with you?
So I think one of the things is humility. And so when you're a younger firefighter, and I don't want to categorize, but when you're a younger male firefighter, sometimes you have this chip on your shoulder, you have this ego that you think you could take on the world, and you think that your way is the best way. I was fortunate enough to have that chip taken off my shoulder pretty early by some of my mentors and also some of the experiences I went on to. I see people now who still have a chip, and that's their egos, and they're not here for them. They're here for look at me, look at this kind of stuff. And I think going back, if 41-year-old Brennan would want to punch 20-year-old Brennan in the head, like you don't know anything yet, buddy. And I'm still learning every day. So,
right.
But the younger years was, like I said, I learned to be humble and learned that there's always somebody that knows more than you. There's always somebody that has seen something better or done something. And so you can always, even if you're a member for a month, you can, learn something off of that person. So again, humility.
And how did you rise through the ranks to become chief?
So again, I'm a transplant, I call myself. But at United, I was a captain. I was a lieutenant and captain, and I was actually worked on the executive side as president for a few years. When I moved to Lower Burrell, I had no ambition to be an officer. I really didn't. We moved here. I joined this fire department because that's where I moved. It wasn't like I picked the fire department. And when I came here, I remember telling my wife, well, this is either going to work out or this is the end of my career. And luckily, there was a great group of people here. And so I was here for a year, and they reluctantly asked me to be a lieutenant. Not they, I reluctantly accepted, I guess. It's a better way to say it. And then that progressed to them wanting me to be an assistant chief. And I did that for 4 years under Mark Marmo, which I learned a lot from Mark. I still do. And when he retired, and I took over.
And how has your outlook on the job changed over time?
The job is more challenging now, and there's several reasons for that. One is the volunteer fire service is on life support. When I started in the late 90s, it was the alarm bell was going off about the lack of volunteers. I think back in the 70s there was over 300,000 volunteer firefighters, and now in the state of Pennsylvania there's under 30,000. So it is ridiculously more difficult because you don't have as many people. So obviously, one, volunteerism is down. Two, the challenges we face and the call volumes we face are more now. So every year our call volume increases, and it's not like we get 5 more calls. It's like 50 or 60 or more calls every year that we did the previous year. Combine that with, the fire situations we go into. So if you go in Lower Burrell, we have houses built in the early 1900s to the 50s, the 60s, to the 90s, to today. So the types of building construction we have varies. The newer building construction is more challenging for firefighters because they're more dangerous. It's all lightweight construction, open concept ideas which allow further fire growth and development and fire flow path. And then the fires are hotter and faster because everything in your home, most of it, is now carbon based. So when it off gases, it's more fuel, which means most of the time before we're even dispatched, that room or wherever that fire is could have flashed already. So survivability rates for our victims are getting lower and lower, so the time amount. So again, you combine all that, lack of volunteers, the greater challenges, trying to do more with less, that adds a lot of stress. And so we as firefighters need to be more proactive on looking down the line and doing what we feel is best for the community. So it continues to be, and if I had the right answer for everything, I'd be a millionaire. But Pennsylvania is really backwards in the fire service. And when I say that, I don't mean that from a leadership perspective. I think we have a great fire commissioner and Tom Cook. I think we have a great deputy commissioner. I might be a little biased, but J.C. Todorsky. And they're moving towards the right path, but they don't have, in my opinion, the bite that they should have, the authority that the government should give them to try to help make some more positive changes. But so it's more challenging from all those aspects.
You said about the construction of homes.
Yeah.
What about electric vehicles?
Yeah, that's another. So Lower Burrell, we have been fortunate, I knock on wood. We haven't had a car fire with one of those yet. We've had a couple accidents with the electric vehicles. We actually bought a tool that goes on our rescue that could deactivate the battery to make it a little safer. Those are not foolproof. But yeah, the electric vehicles and the amount of complexity that those come up with, not just from putting a fire out, but also just the safety of your members. If you're doing a vehicle rescue, if you cut the wrong place, you could seriously hurt yourself or get killed. And so those are, you're right, Steve, that's just another added something we have to deal with. That's the future, like it or not, that's what we're going to have to deal with. So that technology, as it evolves, we're trying to keep up with, okay, how do we prepare for those scenarios and what do we do? I mean, there's reports in the scenarios in which you dump 2,000, 3,000 gallons of water on an electric vehicle. It's out. It gets shipped to a scrapyard, and 3 days later it reignites because it's not really out. So, those are big challenges too.
How would you describe the culture inside your firehouse?
Here, especially, I think we're very fortunate. We have a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, different skill sets. So I think this is not unique to Lower Burrell, but when you have a department full of individuals who are mostly alphas in their minds, sometimes you get some friction. You know what I mean? You get everyone thinks that their way is the right way, and so one of the things I've been really impressed with here is, we, just like we're a big family, so you're not always going to get along. I think every firehouse has that. But when we go on the calls, the BS is dropped, and you do what you got to do and you work. But we really have, people hang out with each other, people go away, people do things. It's really a camaraderie, and one of the things with the fire service in general, it takes a lot, but it also gives you way more than it takes, and it's part of. If you are looking for somebody who needs friends, or if you're looking for somebody who didn't have a good family life and you just want camaraderie, fire service will do that for you. And Lower Burrell number 3, I mean, it is a second family to me. Like these guys and girls, because we have a couple juniors, and Abby's a great firefighter, so I don't ever want to exclude her because she's better than some man that I've seen. But we're a big family, and again, sometimes family fights internally. You don't see that outside, but we smooth it over. So it's great. It's a great atmosphere in here, and also we're big jokesters. So if you want to join LB3, you have to have a thick skin because it's one of the stress relievers, I think. But and I have to admit, I'm a puppet master. I instigate. I'll grab somebody who is normally very quiet, and I'll say, hey, go over and ask this person something. And then they'll go over, and it's like the person riles them up, and everyone starts laughing. And I do that, one, because I'm a jerk, but two, I think as a chief, it lets some of that steam out. And it's not all seriousness. You can have fun and not just be here 24/7 working. You know what I mean? So.
And what makes a good firefighter beyond just training?
So you need to have the number one quality is you need to come here with a mindset of you're here for the right reasons. If you're here for the right reasons, I can make a good firefighter out of anybody. If you are here because you're generally interested in helping the community, you're generally interested in learning and like I said, checking your ego at the door, not using this place as a resume builder or some place where, you just want to come and take advantage, I can make you a great firefighter. It's when you come in here for the wrong reasons. You come in here because you want recognition. You come in here because, and I can't say the names because it starts with whack and ends in ers. People just want T-shirts and they want to say, hey, look, I'm a firefighter. Well, that's all well and good until it's time to go to work. And then where are those people? They're sitting across the street while you have work to be done, or God forbid, you have a victim you have to rescue. So if you come in humbly and say, hey, I'm here to learn, and you want to be a lifelong learner of the fire service, we can make a great firefighter out of anybody.
How do you keep your team sharp and focused between calls?
So one of that is, you mentioned earlier training. So LB3 is really big on training. We have high training standards, both that are self-imposed and city-imposed, that we worked with the city, so that us and our other department, Kinlock, we came together and said to the city, these are the training requirements that we would like to have in the contract. We have a city contract. But we also have high quality standards here. So if you want to be an interior firefighter, there's a list of stuff you have to have. And it's more than just the basic essentials, right? If you want to drive, there's a list of qualifications. If you want to be on the rescue and use tools, list of qualifications. You want to be an officer, it's in our bylaws. At the higher you go up, it's a combination of certifications and experience, so that you don't get somebody to come in here and win a popularity contest and they get to going back to having that responsibility and go, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And you could put people's lives at risk. We train at least, and I say at least because this is the bare minimum, twice a month on a Thursday. You will come in here on off days and you'll see state-led classes here. We just had pumps, and we have an incident safety officer coming. We have guys and girls that will just get together on ourselves and go out and hit a hydrant, go over things, go run a drill here and there. Summertime is a lot more difficult, keep people go on vacations and stuff like that, but at minimum, we have twice a month training. And then we're also working with the rest of Tri-City to do joint training so that we get to interact and stay sharp with them and they get to know us and vice versa. So
What does leadership look like in high stress, high risk moments?
Calmness. One of the lessons that Steve Zamoski taught me was you could be going crazy inside, but your outward demeanor, your outward presence need to be calm. If I'm in charge of a chaotic scene, which often happens, unfortunately for us, we're always in the news or going somewhere. If I am screaming, yelling, if I am running around like a chicken with its head cut off, the whole scene's going to be destabilized. And one of the things, if you think about our priorities, one is life safety, the second is incident stabilization. So, you need to stabilize that incident, because if you don't and you're in charge, things are going to go haywire. People aren't going to listen. People could get hurt. People could get lost. And you need to be efficient and effective, especially if you have life safety issues. You have a trapped person in a house, you have a trapped person in a car. Again, as an incident commander, you have 1,000 things coming at you at once. You have 1,000 decisions you have to make. And inside, you could be going, holy you know what? But outward, you have to make quick, concise, educated, strategic thinking calmly. And people can disagree with me and say that, talking good on the radio doesn't put out fires. It doesn't. I agree with that. But talking like a banshee on the radio doesn't give you, good things either. So.
What's a call or incident that changed you as a leader?
I would say that this was a long time. I won't go into really big specifics. I wasn't a leader. I was a very young fireman, and came across an incident where there was a house fire, and I went in to save the person, and it wasn't a good outcome. I almost quit because it was very stressful, and I had to learn, and through help of others, learn that sometimes even you do everything right and there's nothing more you could have done. Sometimes the outcome isn't what you want, and that's emotional maturity that I learned way back then, and something I still learn. And I think that has helped me as a leader, one, to not only project that, but also help my folks with their mental health and their wellness about, it's okay that you could talk about things, and these things are not your fault as long as you did everything you could. And that's one of the leadership traits that has really, I think, served me well over the years.
Has there been a moment where you thought, this is why I do this?
Many times. I can't give you specifics. Through college, I worked as a firefighter EMT, and I went on thousands of EMS calls, and there's been so many times where you go on calls and we this might start some conversation, but real firefighters in my mind, we don't want appreciation, we don't want the thank yous, that's not what we're here for. It's to me, it's a vocation, it's a calling that I fell into, right, thanks to my brother pushing me. But you go and you help somebody and you see that look of thanks, or you see that, again, not even a word of support, I'm not saying that, but you see that you made a better day for them. And look, a lot of times we're going there, it's their house is on fire, they're trapped, or they've got something crazy going on, and that's our job, to be there. But we also are engaged a lot in the community, and you go out there and you see them and they recognize you ahead of time, and they, they're invested in you just as much as we're invested in the community. Those are the times where it's like, this is what all the sacrifice is for.
And how do you support your crew's mental health and resilience?
Yeah, so mental health is something that's very important to me. Growing up, I consider myself a little bit of old school, a little new school. But growing up, mental health was, hey kid, just suck it up. This is what you're here for. You're weak if you show any kind of mental health problems. I disagree with that. I am genetically dispositioned to have anxiety and panic attacks. It's just in my family. For many years I was ashamed of that. And I look at it this way: it's if you had high blood pressure or diabetes, you need to manage that. Same with mental health. It's a stigma that we have to get away from. And so what I do here is, one, after every what I call more serious or critical call, we come back, and whether it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the nighttime, in the morning, we will have a 15-minute debrief of what went right at that call, what went wrong, what can we do better. But lastly, it's always, how's everybody's headspace, right? And some people don't like talking in a group session. That's fine. I let them know that my door is always open. Or if you don't want to talk to me, talk to somebody, get it out, right? On some of the bigger calls, I've actually called in the critical incident stress debriefing team to ensure that my folks had properly trained mental health professionals that are there for them. I have known personally or know acquaintance of at least 5 or 6 people in my career that have committed suicide. And I don't know for sure what part being a first responder played, but I'm sure it did. And I think a lot of those people held that stuff in because look, we see stuff that most people don't see. And so if you bottle that stuff in and you don't let it out, it'll hurt you. Maybe not now, but 10 years from now, out of nowhere, you'll get hit. And I don't want that. I don't want that for any of my people. So at Lower Burrell 3, we're very big on our mental health and our well-being of our people, not just physically but mentally.
What do you do personally to decompress after difficult days?
My family. I have the best support system in the world with my wife, who has been with me, I always joke, 6 months after I started the fire service. When I started dating her, we're high school sweethearts. She still at times goes, why do you got to do this? And I don't have an answer for that, but I come home to her, I come home to my 2 girls. I try to exercise a little bit or do something to get that out. I am a 41-year-old video gamer, so I'll go and play video games. It's kind of my way of de-stressing. But you have to have an outlet. You have to lean on either if you don't have family, friends, do something to let it out. But yeah, my wife and my kids are the ones that I can come home to, and they're my base. So,
how do you deal with burnout, yours or your team's?
that happens a lot, especially if you're go. And I'm not even talking about, we get calls, but there's, like I said, there's meetings happening here every day. There's activity, especially now with things that we're doing strategically down the road. There's a lot happening. So one of the things I've tried this year, one of the things I've learned from the past, my first term as chief, was maybe setting up a duty crew officer or an officer for the week. So those non-crazy calls, hey, instead of all 8 officers going, maybe this one takes it and handles it. And then I make sure people take breaks and we check each other. My deputy chief and my assistant chief know when I'm overly stressed and tell me, hey, take a break. I'm like, okay, thanks. And likewise, it's okay to take a little break from here. You don't have to be on every single call, every single training. You have to have that time. Otherwise, to your point, you're going to get burned out and you're going to be stressed and you're not going to want to do it anymore.
Do you talk about trauma in the firehouse, or does it stay unspoken?
We talk about it. Like I said before, like you have to. If you let it build up, it'll hurt somebody. Maybe not today, but definitely in their lifetime they'll feel it. And then the unexpected results of that also is then their families and friends deal with it too, and when it happens. So we try to avoid that at all costs. And so, we have a great EMS staff too, and it goes the same for them. So our EMS supervisor makes sure if they have a bad call that they get the right resources in, and they have that same talk. So it's not just the fire side, it's all of us.
What's something the public gets wrong or misunderstands about firefighting?
One, that we're a paid fire department. I can't tell you how many times that our public thinks that we're paid. I guess that's a compliment on one side, but on the other side, it's not the reality. So they also think that all their tax dollars go to pay for what we have here, and so we try to educate them. We do get a stipend from the city, but it is a very, very small portion of our overall budget. We rely heavily on the donations from our community and our fundraising events for us to operate. And without the community support, we wouldn't be able to be here. And so that's why it's another reason it's very important for them to come see what we have, see what our operations are, see what we can do, and get out there, engage with them, and get them to know us, to understand if I'm going to give you a donation, it's going to a right cause, and they're going to use it correctly. So we try to have open houses and do these things so the community can come in here and see it, and then we try to educate them at the same time about how much training we do, how much is involved in actually what a cost of bunker gear is, what a cost of a fire truck is nowadays, what it costs for air pack. So just trying to get that out there, because when you talk to the general public, even when I'm not talking as fire chief and they find out I'm the fire chief, they're blown away about how much things cost, how much we get from the city, and so on and so forth.
How does your department engage with local community?
Right, so we are very engaged with a lot of the community events. So we go to, it started when I was assistant chief. I tried to, not that we didn't do it before I was here, but wanted to get more engaged with the city, and started with going to the Easter egg hunts, just taking a truck down there and letting the kids see the truck and interacting with the kids and the parents. And then that led to building a better relationship with the city. So we go to, the community chats up at the school district, or fireside chats, anything that happens up there, anything. So like Kicking in Kentucky's coming up, so our EMS is going to be working with them down there. It's just getting involved and being public and being visible to them is key, because we support them every day and they support us. It's a win-win situation.
You have great turnouts for the parades too.
Yeah, the parades are huge, and it's funny because I'm not really a parade guy. I'm not, but I understand the significance of, well, especially Memorial Day parade. I go to that out of respect out of those who lost their lives for our country. I do that. But our guys go to all the kind of parades. They go to everywhere around here, and I think it's important, again, for visibility. But I'm just not one of those guys for parades. It's just not me.
What's the biggest challenge your department faces right now?
The future. The future of the volunteer fire service in general. I think, volunteerism is down, like I mentioned earlier, and we are very fortunate now. We have 4 or 5 junior firefighters, and we've been working hand in hand with Allegheny County Fire Academy to get that new program into Burrell about kids being able to go to ACFA during school. But we're fortunate here that we have our generation of firefighters. We have a mix of 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Very few 60-year-olds that are active. But 10 years from now, I'm going to be 50, and other. So like, we're not getting people knocking on the door. So it's how do we prepare for the future and strategically set things up so that we provide coverage for our citizens. I have alerted the city, and this is nothing they don't know, that in my lifetime there's going to have to be a paid fire department of some sort in Lower Burrell and the Tri-City area. It's the reality of it. Part of it is we all have 9-to-5 jobs, very few shift work, so daytime crewing is horrendous, and that's why we're working with the other 3 fire chiefs in the Tri-City to create this Tri-City Firefighters Association to try to combat that. But that's a Band-Aid. That's not the solution. That's getting us some time to figure out what we need to do. If the city would come here tomorrow and say, Brennan, we're going to put a full-time fire station up, full-time crew, I'd hand in my chief's hat because that's what's best for our citizens. That's what I would love to see. But that's the biggest challenge is volunteerism and what the future looks like.
How do you make the most of limited resources?
You have to know the limitations and skill sets of your people. There are people here that are very good at engine work or truck work, rope rescue, and there's others that aren't good at those things. And so you have to combine. So in a volunteer world, you might get 5 different people out, and you have to know as a chief or an officer or a leader, that person's good at this, but they're not good at this. So I need to use and strategically deploy those resources in that way. And you have to train and practice together. So we go every year to a company burn. It's one of the things that's mandatory for us. If you want to remain on the interior mass list, you guys were out to Butler last year, great shots. But I purposely set people up that normally don't work with each other during those sessions and in training otherwise, because you never know who you're going to be running on that truck with. So, I'm not going to put you with your best friend because that's the cool thing to do. I mean, I get it, but, put you in situations real life and figure out how you work together so you have efficient teamwork and you do your job and you go home.
What's one thing you wish city leaders or politicians understood better?
The dedication, the commitment. Don't get me wrong, we have a very good relationship with our city. We have really good city leaders now. But this is a lot. This is a lot to ask of somebody. And to, 3 o'clock in the morning, pager goes off, no matter what it is, and you still gotta go to work the next day, And so I think they understand the amount of money that the volunteer fire service saves. I mean, it's millions of dollars. But I think they appreciate, and I think they respect us, but until you're in this and you do it, I don't think you fully understand the dedication and commitment it takes. And I don't know if I can ever articulate that as well, as I'd like to them. But yeah, that's probably what I would say.
Has technology changed how you operate for better or for worse?
A mix. I think there's some firefighters that are really old school that are resistant to technology, and then there's some new firefighters that rely too much on technology. I think you have to have a good mix of that. So there's so many examples, but if you look at our bunker gear, for example, the amount of heat that bunker gear can take now compared to what they did 20 years ago, it protects you more, but it also doesn't allow you to understand where you're going deeper into places maybe you shouldn't have been. And so those newer firefighters don't understand that and haven't experienced that, and so they're putting themselves in circumstances sometimes they shouldn't be. On the flip side of that, we have iPads and we have wireless headsets now that we can walk around and not be tied to a truck. We can see all of our hydrants, and we have GPS navigation. Those things should be embraced by people. But the older you get, the less you are inclined to change. The younger you are, you think everything new is the best. You have to have a good mix and test it and see what works.
And what drives you to keep showing up every day?
If I knew that answer, my wife would know first. I don't. It's just something I have to do. It's not something that I challenge people when they say it's a hobby. It's not a hobby. A hobby, yeah, there's hobbies that can kill you, but this is not a hobby to me. This is something that I have to do. It's not like a light switch that I can just turn off one day and be like, I'm done. I've had my fill, you know. It's just something that I think I was meant to do, and while I can physically and mentally still do it, I'm going to do it. So,
How do you want to be remembered as the chief?
I don't really think about myself that much. I think my biggest thing would be if somebody down the line says, you know, B taught me that, they call me B. If B taught me that, or I've seen B do that, and they take that and use it, and then they teach somebody, I would be happy about that. My own personal legacy or whatever, I don't care. That's not why I'm here. So,
What do you see, or where do you see this department 10 years from now?
I think this department 10 years from now will be very important to the region. I think not just to the city of Lower Burrell, I think we're strategically placed to be a good hub for whatever the future holds. Like I said, there's some younger people here that are coming up, and I hope there's a lot of potential in them. My job as chief is not to remain chief. My job is to prepare the next generation to take over. And I see a lot of good candidates for that, not just for my position, but leadership in general. So I'm very hopeful for the future of LV3 and just the city of Lower Burrell in general. I think we've got really good structure. And one of the things, you know, I'm big on listening to the life members here and taking their advice, and may not always agree with it or use it, but I listen to them because they're the ones that built this organization. And so our job as current leadership is to be good stewards of what they built, progress it up a little bit to the next step, and then hand it off to the next generation.
And if you could speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
You don't know anything. You don't know anything, kid. You don't. And also I would tell them to spend more time with those people I mentioned when I begin with. Those people at Wall VFD that even though someone passed away, I may not talk to them anymore or see them, they're still with me on every call. In fact, in my helmet, no one knows this, but everyone will know now, on the back of my shield, I actually have written in red ink, what WWSD, what would Steve do? So I would tell that kid to spend more time with those people and learn as much as he could.
What keeps you up at night when it comes to your department?
Losing somebody. Losing one of my firefighters. Somebody getting hurt. There has been many times where, you know, like I said, I have really good firefighters. I trust them. I have really good experienced people. But my job is to keep them safe. Let them do their job, but, you know, bring them home. So that's the thing that keeps me up is just, you know, I'm always my hardest critic on Fireground. I was I shouldn't say was, I don't get to fight fire that much anymore, but I was a very aggressive firefighter, but I think I was a smart firefighter the older I got. Like, I just didn't dive in because I wanted to look salty, right? I did the job that I had to do and go home, and I wouldn't put my people into a situation I wouldn't put myself into. And when I have to pull them out, they're not happy about it, but, you know, it's because I see something they may not have seen, but ultimately I want them to come home every night.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit. How do you handle internal conflict among your team?
Well, that was probably the biggest challenge I had my first tenure as my first 2 years as chief, because I'm not a dictator. I let people have their feedback, and, you know, off the fireground. On the fireground, I'm the supreme commander. That's my job. Off the fireground, this is our fire department. This isn't Brennan's fire department. This is ours. So I try to be a little more democratic on how we make certain strategic decisions. But I learned that one of my shortcomings was I didn't step in, and when people weren't coming to an agreement, I didn't step in my first term and make that ultimate decision. That was my fault. I own that. So moving forward, you know, I try to let them be adults and work things out. And look, sometimes when there's oil and water, they're not going to mix. But we got to get to a point where at least we respect each other. And like I said, I will say this: when the tones drop, that BS goes out the door. I've never seen it happen here. But I've learned to step in and be a little more assertive this go around. And like I said, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I apologize. I own up to those things. There's no manual to be a fire chief, especially the more complex your department is. Like I do, I have, between active and inactive lives and my great EMS division over there, I have over 70 to 80 different people that at one point could have an issue and I have to deal with it. And so I try to treat them with respect, treat them as adults, let them try to work things out, but I step in when I need to now and quash it.
Have you ever questioned whether this job was worth it? What got you through that?
There's not, and I think you're lying to yourself if you don't say I probably thought about quitting the fire service, oh my God, 1,000 times over this 26 years. Just because you do put so much of yourself into it, and it can be very challenging. But what ends up happening is you take a break, because you're burned out when that happens. I mean, that's what it is. You're burned out. You take a break, and then you realize, like I said earlier, this is challenging, but the fire service gives you way more than it takes. And I think just having that calling and also having the support of, I think it would be a lot easier. My wife would jump up for joy, I think, if I would say I'm done. She would know it would kill me inside, but she, and that's why she wouldn't want me to do it. But, relying on my family, taking the break and realizing that, okay, I'm cooled off now. My Irish temper's gone. I can get back to where I am. So yeah, I thought about it many times, and it'll never happen. But at the moment, you're like, I'm done. I'm just gonna quit. I'm done. And then you take a sleep. You wake up, and it's like, okay, let's get back to work.
What's a moment of joy you've experienced on the job that outsiders might not expect?
Watching people grow. Watching people, I'm not talking about just age, but, again, for me, the joy is watching people better themselves, both in here and outside of the fire service. And I've had that happen here. I've had that happen at United, where I've had people, younger guys and girls that were juniors, and, one of my proteges is now the fire chief back home, and I'm really proud of him and all of them and what they're doing. And even here, one of our guys just graduated Pitt Nursing, and I'm very proud of him. And watching them become adults and watching them take lessons that they've learned here and apply that to the regular life. I think that's the other thing that people miss is, like, this is taught in my own professional life outside of this place. A lot of skills I learned here I use in my day-to-day as a leader at work too. So there's a lot of skill sets you can learn as a firefighter that you can apply elsewhere. And so that's the joy. I love watching it. You get to see people, like, sometimes people fall in love, like Abby and Justin, and they start a family. And it's just, it's great to see that. And again, part of this big family of LB3.
How do you mentor younger firefighters?
Yeah, so I try to hook them up with people that would help them along their way. I think I am still finding mentors myself later in my career, and I think that's the fun part. Obviously my brother was the biggest influence for me, and then Steve Zamoski, like I mentioned, and I'll say his name 1,000 times because he needs to be out there. But with our younger folks, I try to be an example. And I try to, especially with our junior firefighters, if they're on a fire scene with me, you'll see them right next to me. It's not because I'm just very protective, which I am, but I want them to learn. I want them to see what we're doing. And as a junior, you have all the time in the world to watch and learn why smoke does what it does and building construction. That prepares them more to be better interior firefighters. For our younger officers, I try to, hey, look, I've been in your shoes. I was just like you. I had that testosterone filled, like, who are you to tell me? And I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, like I said. And I tried to say, hey, look, I did this. I don't recommend this. But these guys, they have to learn on their own sometimes, and they have to find their own path. But you just try to be a good example, and you try to encourage them. And especially with your younger firefighters, our juniors, I try to reinforce to them that their education is prime. That's number one. Their school activities and activities they're doing outside of the fire service is more important than what they're doing elsewhere. So, you just have to make sure they understand that this place is going to be here. I want them to be here and learn, but the fire department should be part of your life. It shouldn't be your entire life.
What's your biggest regret in your firefighting career?
How I treated some people when I was younger. My heart was in the right place. But there are some people that I came after pretty hard to get a point across, and I should have done it differently. That's my biggest regret.
Have you seen the role of women or minorities shift in the department over the years?
Absolutely. Like I said, I mentioned that Abby will probably hate me for saying this because she doesn't like attention either, but Abby is a hell of a firefighter, and we try to promote women firefighters as much as possible. I'm very excited. We have a new female junior. We haven't had one of those in about 6 or 7 years, so that is awesome. And then we welcome minorities. Right now, we currently don't have any, but like I said earlier, anybody can be a firefighter if you put the time in. And I mean this. There's physical activity, obviously. Everyone can be in better shape, including myself. I'm not saying that. There's some firefighters out there that can run circles around me physically, and that's awesome. And we all want to strive for that. But you give me somebody who is willing to be here and learn and be humble, we can make a good firefighter out of anybody. It doesn't matter your age, your race, your sex, or anything. We're blind to all that.
What would your crew say about your leadership style?
I would hope that they would think that it's a calm leadership style. It's a decisive leadership style now. On a fire ground, I think that's most of the stuff that you do as a fire chief, 99, I don't say that much, maybe 95% is all off the fire ground. 5% of what we do is on the fire ground. So your leadership is about people management, and it's really HR stuff related, right? So I hope they would say that I'm always open. I'm always willing to listen to their ideas, hear them out. May not agree, that might not be my final decision, but I'm willing to take that feedback, and I try to be as collaborative as possible. On the fire ground, I hope they think I'm decisive, that I'm there to put the fire out or do whatever you do as quickly as possible and go home, and that they trust my knowledge and my skill set to make sure they come home. So,
what does the public not see after the flames are out?
all the cleanup that has to be done, all the disinfecting that has to be done, all the preparation to get us back in service, all the preparation to make sure that we are operationally ready to go. They don't see the review of the incident that we do. Again, if it's a not so big of an incident, we'll have just a tabletop discussion right after the call or on a training. If it's a bigger incident, we'll actually do a full training debrief on it. We'll pull the audio of the dispatch and all that communication, go through all that. So I don't think they don't see the constant preparation that we do, the constant self-reflection and constructive criticism we have of ourselves, and what each firefighter has upon themselves, right? You're only as strong as your weakest link, and so what kind of constructive criticism and improvements is that firefighter trying to make for themselves to better themselves, better the organization, and make them more prepared for the next call.
If this were your last day on the job, how would you want to spend it?
Oh God, that's a good question. I want to spend it with them and not know that it's my last day on the job, if that makes sense. I just would want it I wanted to be, the jokes, go to work, do it, come back, and just, I wouldn't want it to be like a final thing. You know what I mean? I'd want it to just be like another day.
How do you approach mentoring junior firefighters, especially those new to the job straight out of training?
The junior firefighters, like I said, we have a structured program around that. There's state laws and guidelines that the Office of Fire Commissioner sends out that we follow. So we follow all those rules and regulations and state working law permits and all that kind of stuff. They have to maintain C average grades in every class to be here because, again, education is the most important thing. But what we do with the juniors is try to get them involved just as they do the same training that our senior folks do. And training wise, they can't go into burning buildings and stuff like that. They can't use the hydraulic tools or operate the tower, but they're getting packed up. They're learning search techniques. They're learning how to communicate. They're learning what different acronyms mean. They're learning what equipment means. Our goal is to prepare them so when they are able to take essentials, it's like, this is boring because I know all this, right? And instill in them to continue to push forward with their education. With younger firefighters who are just coming into the job that are not juniors, we try to instill, like I said, lifelong learning, better yourself. We really push pro board certifications here of all levels. I am not a paper fire chief in the sense that I don't think if you've been on the job for 6-7 years and you have 30 paper certifications, you're a great firefighter. I think it's a combination. You have to have experience, you have to have time on the job, and you have to have the pro board competency certifications that prove that you're able to do this. Because, like it or not, unfortunately in today's day and age, you are liable, you are responsible. So you're going to get on a court stand and they're going to say, hey, Brennan Sites, what makes you qualified to be fire chief? Well, I've been doing this for 26 years. Great, what else? Like, what other measure can you say that is an industry standard that you have that makes you able to make these decisions? And so we push that. We also push them to take classes right off the bat. So, for example, if you come to Lower Burrell and you want to be an interior firefighter, obviously you have to have the 4 mods of essentials with the live burn. And I look at essentials, if you equate the fire training to a educational thing, then essentials is basically kindergarten. So, yay, you passed kindergarten, you passed essentials, you learn your ABCs, you know what these tools are, and you did your colors. But you have the rest of your high school career and grade school career to learn everything else you need to learn, and it never stops. But when you come here, you have to have essentials with a live burn. And then before you go into a building, I make you take a state burn session, SBS, that's state accredited, because that's 16 hours of learning fire flow path and doing more hands-on stuff. And then, even then, we don't want you on that first line. We want you on the second line and having a mentor with you to show you what you're doing. In the volunteer world, that doesn't always work out. If we got to do what we got to do, we throw you on there, but we try not to. And then throughout that career, as a young firefighter, we try to hook them up with different mentors. It may not just me, but there's a lot of great firefighters here that have been doing this for a long time. Hey, go watch what Jeff DeCola is doing. Go watch what these other folks are doing and learn from them.
Getting back to the junior program, are you involved with the high school on trying to recruit?
Yes. So we've been very active. Like I said, I've been working hand in hand with Mike Kraminski at the ACFA, who runs that junior program for going to school there. We've also gone up to the school several times for career fairs. We have a good relationship with the superintendent and the administrators up there and the guidance counselors, so that we go in and we just actually went up, Ted Harita and I went up there a month ago and did a presentation about junior firefighting and the benefits and the possible scholarships and stuff like that you can get for college and for trade schools. So we're trying everything we can to get kids interested.
What do today's recruits bring to the table that's different from past generations?
The ability to, I think the ability to use technology a lot easier and we talked about it a little bit earlier about the pros and cons of technology, but I think the new recruits have the ability to understand technology a little bit easier and implement it. So, I mean, you even take, when I started fighting fire, I think the first air pack I had was a steel bottle with an elephant tube that hooked up, right? There was no pass device. There was no, integrated alarms.
It's 12:15 p.m.
Sorry.
That's okay. So they're able to catch on to those things pretty quickly. I think where what they sometimes lack is understanding some basics that that some of us would take for God, you don't understand how to do that. Like, why not? Well, that's not how things are done anymore. So it helps because it bridges a gap sometimes where the new recruits and the older guys and gals can find the middle ground and they help each other, which is kind of cool.
How do you strike a balance between respecting tradition and adapting for younger firefighters?
So again, for me, simple little things and how you say things matter. So your words matter. And so, for example, when we were re-decaling our tower, which is not here right now, or our new engine rescue that we expect, there has been a certain patch that's been on our doors for since the 70s. Little things like that, where some people are like, oh, that's stupid, let's get rid of that. No, that's tradition. That is something that ties all of us back to the folks that were here before us. And yeah, we added things and changed things, but that's a small, stupid, I'm not a parade piece guy. I can care less what the truck looks like. Can the truck put fire out? That's what I care about. But what I try to do, and we're good here. If you come here on a Saturday morning, you will find people that are 14 to 70 some years of age, all having coffee. Everyone's solving the world problems, and at that table back there, and the fire service. But you listen to those. Elders, and you listen to those who came before you, and that's how you bridge that gap. And you get them involved and understand that once the senior guys, and I'm talking really about more the inactive life members, the older guys that can't run on calls anymore. Once you show them respect and they know that you're here for the right reasons, they are nothing but a wealth of knowledge and information. So I'm always about respect for the past because that's why we're here. They built this.
How has social media changed the way the public views the fire service?
In our instance, good. We use Facebook to our advantage. We try to get messaging out there all the time. That's allowed us to connect with the media a little bit more, to advertise our things. It also has displayed sometimes some bad behaviors. Not always, from firefighters in this area, but across the country, they has been able to, we utilize that as tools of constructive criticism. So we tell our firefighters and our members, there's always a camera on you, no matter where you go. I wonder where that would come from. But there's always cameras. There's always, whether it's like you guys, or it's the media, or it's somebody with their cell phone, right? So always act in a professional manner as much as possible, because that's the one, how you should be doing it. But two, it is the expectation of the public. And if you have a bad day and you pop off on somebody, it will be all over it, and it'll be on my desk, and that's not a conversation you want to have with me. So, but social media has been good for us. Like just doing something like this. This is great that you guys are doing this to get this out to the public, because a lot of people don't know what firefighting, volunteer firefighters do, or what kind of stress and preparation goes into this. So.
And do you see it as a useful tool or a risk for the department's image and operations?
Both. But I think, again, if you have standard operating guidelines and SOPs around what you're doing on fire grounds, it shouldn't be a risk, right? If you're doing what you're supposed to, there should be no problem. And it's been a big benefit for us. having the ability to have, like, Steve did a recruitment video for us a few years ago. That was huge. Getting our stuff on Facebook, massively huge and important for us. So I think it's a benefit more than it is a risk, but the risk is out there. If you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, you're going to get caught.
Do you think social media helps keep certain firefighters in check
Yes.
because of the threat of
Now more than ever.
being exposed?
Now more than ever. If you have somebody show up, if you have somebody show up and you turn your head and there's a camera on you, you're less likely that you're going to do some stupid stuff, right? You're not going to be unsafe. You're not going to be breaking windows with your hands and doing really stupid. We should be breaking windows depending on what the situation. That's a whole other tactic. But anyway, you won't be doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing because there's a camera on you. I think that's beneficial, again, because having that focus on individuals doesn't impede your job to do your job. It just means, oh, somebody's watching. This might end up on my chief's fire desk. I better do what I'm supposed to be doing,
How do you guide your crew in terms of what's appropriate to share online?
So we have a very strict social media policy here. So one, they are not to be, when we're on scenes, they are not to be filming their own stuff. I do allow them to wear fire cams inside, but anything they post cannot show any patient information. It cannot show any victims. It cannot show any identifier of where that house is or what the situation is, and everything that's posted on their personal accounts that's fire related has to be approved by me. So the fire chiefs, we all take pictures of scenes for our reporting purposes, but if you notice our social media, we have nothing out there. We don't post pictures, and I'm not putting anyone down who does this. I'm just saying we don't feel it necessary for us to put out, oh, we went on this accident call today, or we went to this fire today. You guys will post the pictures. There's no need for us to do that, right? We just go do our jobs and come home. And other people view it as a way to have their public understand what they're doing, and I get that. I'm not putting them down, but I'm just saying we have a strict policy. If you want to release something on your Instagram, your Snapchat, your TikTok, it better be ran through me, because when I get it and it's not run through me, we're going to have some discipline issues, suspensions, and so on and so forth. There's definitely never, ever pictures of victims or pictures of devastation, because that's not what we're here to do. Again, we're here to do our job and go home.
Last two.
Yep.
If someone was thinking of joining the fire service, what would you say to them to encourage them to join the fire service?
Do it. Try it. This is coming from a guy who was a 13-year-old kid that didn't want anything to do with the fire service. And this isn't for everybody. I mean, that's the truth. But I actually have a lot of respect for people that come in and say, I want to try this, and they get in there and they go, oh, this isn't for me. Hey, thank you, you tried. I appreciate that. But for those who come in here, and like me, it was that 13-year-old kid, you don't smell exhaust anymore, but you get that hook in you. It's life-changing. It truly is. And I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this. I don't know what I'd do in my spare time. I really wouldn't. I don't have spare time now. I don't have any hair because of this place either, but that's a different subject. But it is fun. It is, and not fun in the sense that, look, we're all a little bit cuckoo for running into buildings and doing stuff like that. I understand that. But there's a lot here that you don't have to run into buildings. You if you want to do rescue, if you want to do EMS, if you want to do administrative stuff, there's a spot here for you. And you can become something that's much larger than yourself. And I think that's the most important key thing.
And the last question, we kind of touched on this, but what would you change or say or recommend to the state fire commission or about the future of firefighting and the fire service?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, I think we have the right leadership at the top. I think we had a good fire commissioner before too. I'm not saying that, but I think Commissioner Cook was the best man for the job. And I think, again, biased, but Deputy Chief Sidorsky as well. but they don't have the authority that I think they should have. And I understand, and this is controversial a little bit, but I will take quality over quantity. Yes, some of my colleagues and my peers will tell you that training requirements now are too much. That, when I took Essentials, it was 88 hours. It's up to 240 now. But again, in my analogy, Essentials is like preschool. And yes, I will agree that does deter people from volunteering. It's a big time commitment. But I go back to saying, this is a vocation. This is something that can kill you. There's not enough training for it. You should never stop training. But what I think should happen, and this will never happen, but because it's not like I said, it's not a sexy thing. Right now, the State Fire Commissioner has control over training and certification and grants. I think they should also be, and they have a we're part of the voluntary certification program. But I think it should be mandatory that all interior firefighters across the Commonwealth have at least Essentials of firefighting, and they have at least, the hazmat, which is a part of that, the hazmat awareness and ops, and they should have basic firefighter survival to get themselves out of it as well. And the state should be able to enforce that. And the way you get around the way you do enforcement is there's a state grant program that we all participate in. We should be able to we should have to show proof that all of our interior firefighters have Essentials of firefighting. And if you don't provide that proof, you're not eligible for a state grant for firefighting. That may hurt people, I understand that, but that's a very small start of a way to do it. And I think the legislative body needs to give the fire commissioner a little more say. And I get it, and depending on where you're at in the Commonwealth, you're in the middle of the state, it's rural, and they're just hoping to get members. But, again, that's where we need to look at from a holistic standpoint and change of maybe how we've been doing things for the past 40, 50 decades, or 50 years, not 50 decades. It may not be the right way. We have to focus. So, I'd want to give the fire commissioner a little more power. Right now it's down to, every fire chief and municipality dictates their training standards. We have really high training standards here. They could be higher, but then, you have to be realistic with this too. You can't make massive changes overnight. So I always use the analogy of Ronald Reagan, right? When he wanted the drinking age to be 21 across the nation, the state said no way. He said fine, no more federal funding. It's the same thing. You can't tell me that your people that are going into buildings have at least all 4 mods of Essentials, or wherever it was before, fundamentals or firefighting, whatever it was, the equivalent of at that time. Then you shouldn't be able to get grant money. It's just a small step.
Awesome. That's all we got.
Thank you, guys.